to the Dawgs Podcast with your hosts, Blake Reneker, Justin Charles, and Josh All.
Hey, what's up, Browns fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Dawgs Podcast presented by Manly Bands. Josh All, your host today, and I've got a very special guest joining me. I talked about it on the last episode, and he's here today. It's Damon Wolfe from In Motion Football. Will be joining me to break down his franchise valuation chart and all the data that goes into giving the Browns a much higher score than what we would probably think going into this season. And it's like a 3-year projection. So we'll talk about how they project for this year in 25, next year in 26, and the following year in 2027. Stay tuned. If you missed last episode when we actually talked about the chart, you're going to be probably in for a little bit of a surprise on how they project the Browns to perform in 2027. We will get to all that with Damon. Before I do, make sure you guys like the video on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, tap the notification bell, give us a 5-star review on all the audio platforms if you're listening to the podcast. And if you want to play fantasy football with us, we are almost, we're over halfway through July. We're heading into August. The deadline will be mid to late August for fantasy football signups because we've got to divvy up the leagues. We got to set the draft dates and we got to go. It's almost the NFL season. So head over to jointhedawgs.com, become an official Dog Pack member on the Patreon page. It's just $5 a month to join the Patreon. That gets you access to the private Discord, gets you access to us pretty much 24/7. Get in there, talk to diehard Browns fans all the time. There's always something going on. And obviously, sign up for fantasy football. $5 a month, it's like you're donating a cup of coffee to the Dawgs Podcast. You won't even notice it's missing each month, but we do appreciate it since we are an independent podcast and all that kind of good stuff. So head over to jointhedawgs.com, become a Patreon member, and play fantasy football with us. All right, guys, like I mentioned in the opening, I'm joined by special guest Damon Wolfe, the founder of In Motion Football. If you guys want to check it out, go to inmotion.football, not .com, inmotion.football. Damon, welcome to the show, man. Glad to have you here.
Thanks so much, Josh. I really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, we're excited to talk to you. So we did an episode a few nights ago this week, me and Justin, one of my other co-hosts, and we kind of previewed this episode. So we talked about the FV chart for the Browns specifically, kind of broke it down just to give all the audience an idea of what we're going to be talking about with you today. And I really want you to give the audience a background of In Motion Football, how you got started, what your goals and everything for the company, all that kind of stuff. If you can see, if you're watching the video today, if you're just listening on audio, I'm wearing my Believeland shirt. So this is going to be a more uplifting episode than what we've had to do recently here. Damon's going to give us a few things here as Browns fans to believe in. So excited to get this conversation rolling. But why don't you go ahead and talk about In Motion Football for a minute?
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. Well, I started In Motion Football with the idea that the next generation of football coverage isn't louder, that it's smarter. And so, there's a lot of hot takes out there and, cutting through all that noise is a pretty difficult thing to do. So decided to start the company. And, we have some very specific goals in mind. Obviously, the franchise valuation triangle. It's a framework to, basically evaluate the structural foundation of all 32 teams. That's our foundational content piece that we're putting out there right now. But we have other things that we would like to do as well.
Okay. Well, that's exciting. I really do want to talk about this FV triangle and how you, what is the analytics and I guess just the data and everything that goes into creating this triangle, and then how do you break it down for each NFL team?
So basically, it is a hybrid kind of model. So there are definitely quantitative inputs. And then on top of that, we add subjective analysis to bring context to the data and the numbers. And so basically the FV triangle stands for franchise valuation. And that's not like dollar signs or anything like that, but it's actually the value of the franchise with its structure that's in place. So there are 12 layers to the triangle. The 3 outer layers, if you can imagine a triangle, and I think you're going to have some graphics to put up.
Yes, the graphics will be on the screen. Yep.
Okay. So the triangle basically has 3 equal outer layers. the roster for each team, the coaching staff for each team, and also the front office, which comprises of both the ownership group and the general manager. So that calculation, we have anywhere from 4 to even a dozen inputs on each of the layers of the triangle, and those on the outer layer are equal 15%, which accounts for 45% of the overall score. And then there are 9 internal layers, things like leadership, talent evaluation, salary cap, scheme, quarterback situation, development of players, even player satisfaction is evaluated. We call that player EXP or experience. And basically that takes into consideration things like location of the franchise, because that's important to players when they decide where they want to go, for things like, quality of life, and then, tax statuses and situations. And then we even include a lot of the NFLPA report card grades into that data.
Yeah, we've talked about those since they've been coming out here recently, and those are definitely important. And this year, not so great for the Browns, but it's interesting.
But
so
they're
explain
working on it.
Yeah, they're working on it. Yeah, well, hey, they're going to build the new stadium and hopefully have a state-of-the-art locker room and maybe a place for the players to meet with their families after that. That'd be great. So I'm looking at the internal layers of this triangle, and again, I'm going to try to explain this verbally for the people just listening to the podcast on audio, but it's a little bit different, at least from what I would have expected. Like if you told me, okay, this internal triangle is made out of 9 different layers, and these are the different pieces of it, which did from the smallest layer at the very top to the biggest layer at the very bottom base of the triangle, which layer do you think, or where do you think quarterback would fall? I, as a fan of football and doing the podcast and everything, would say, oh, quarterback has to be one of the bigger components. But actually in the triangle, you've got it up top and you've got it listed as 2%.
Yeah. So the reason for that is because we also take quarterback in a heavy consideration on the overall roster, on the 15% on the outer layer.
Oh, so okay. So you're kind of counting it twice.
Yeah. So basically it's like a multiplier inside the framework.
Okay. That makes more sense then, because looking at it, I was thinking, okay, maybe there's less importance on the quarterback position than what I was thinking, but apparently no, you do have that factored in.
Yep. That's correct.
Okay.
And, that's something that I kind of struggle with. This was kind of an idea that kind of came together like over 3 years ago in 2022. I had just gone through a pretty devastating business venture that, kind of had me at a low point. And so, my love for football dates back to, my childhood. And so in my journal, I was kind of sketching out some stuff about, because in my background, I have an entrepreneur background. And, we kind of used a similar framework to evaluate businesses. And so I was like, well, why can't we do this for, NFL teams and franchises? So that's kind of where the idea originated. And it's kind of been a work in progress over the past 3 years. And that is one of the things that, I ultimately came to in deciding how to actually weight each layer and structure things. So I think that the quarterback as a multiplier kind of works out for us.
That's interesting. It's really cool to hear where the idea for this stemmed from. And it's always interesting to me when people come up with ideas for something for football or, sports or some other thing that they had been using for something completely different years in the past. So that is really interesting. All right. So let's kind of hone in here for Browns fans, and let's talk about your FV score and the triangle and everything, your projections for the Cleveland Browns, because I will say when I first looked at this, and I think most fans would probably agree with me, not what I was expecting. When I saw the overview, I said, well, let's see what these guys have to say about our Cleveland Browns. And it's got an FV score of 63.8, which ranks us at 17th out of the 32 NFL teams. And I think I speak for a lot of fans when I say I definitely would have anticipated our ranking being a little closer to the bottom of the league, just given the current situation and everything. But you kind of push this out on a 3-year trajectory and all that kind of stuff. So why don't you break down the FV score and we'll kind of talk about that.
So yeah, for the Browns, they rated at a 63.8 on the FV score. The FV score is out of 100, and we have a tiering system. And I think you will have the graphics there as well. But basically, all of the teams that score a 72 and above are elite. And then anything 67, between 67 and 72 are considered contenders. And then everything from 57 to 67 is considered mid-tier. And then 57 and below, we consider those organizations in rebuild mode.
That's kind of where I feel like a lot of Browns fans would have expected us to be. But you've got us in the mid-tier, sure, which is cool. I think that, we talked on this podcast how some of our hosts think the Browns are going to be really bad this year. I'm more on the side of we could be sneaky, somewhat competitive to where we might be closer to that 500 range than a lot of people might believe. We'll see how it all plays out. The recent Quinshon Judkins news did not help, which we'll talk about in some of this stuff. But can you tell me real quick which teams scored in that elite tier, the 72 and above?
Well, yeah, so there are, obviously the teams that scored there are some of your usual suspects, teams that you would expect. And we have to remember that this is also a kind of a snapshot in time of where they are now heading into the season. And that this is basically helps us to provide a forecast over the next 3 years by measuring the structural health of each team. So for the elite teams, now we do have everything coming out in our season preview, our 2025 season preview that I spoke about earlier. All of the scores and rankings will be fully revealed then, but I'll give you a few teams right now.
Okay. That are. Yeah, I don't need you to give everything away. Sure. Give away the farm, but
no, it's okay. So obviously, I'll give you the team that scored the highest in our rankings, and it's probably pretty obvious. It would be the Philadelphia Eagles. Okay. They were far and away the highest scoring team. And then you have teams like Baltimore, and then Kansas City bringing up kind of the back end of the elite teams, Buffalo. And then you get into some of the contenders, what I think is really interesting.
Okay. Well, yeah, like I don't need you to give away the farm. Like
no,
I
it's
said.
all
I know
good.
You've got everybody head over to the website and everything, check out these scores and everything if you want to see the full rankings. But I was just curious because you've got the Browns, like I said, 63.8 out of 100, and then just they're in that mid tier. Yeah. But 63.8, I don't feel like that's 10 points away from that 72 and up, which is actually the elite tier. Just it's. I was talking to Justin the other night on the show, and I said, as Browns fans and doing the podcast, we're so ingrained in the team. We follow this stuff, day in and day out, and it's easy to get caught up in some of the negativity that is surrounding certain pieces of the franchise. And then whenever you step back and you see an outside party do an evaluation like this, and it's nowhere near as doom and gloom as some of us may believe, it's like, okay, well, what are we missing here? Let's hear what these guys have to say, how they perceive the organization.
Sure. So, the Browns, I consider what took place last season with the Browns more of an anomaly than probably, the results weren't a match for what they have actually built over the past few years. When you take a look at the quality of the roster overall, I'm really, really still excited about the coaching staff in Cleveland. I think that they have a sound structure in place there with Stefanski at the helm. I like Tommy Rees becoming the offensive coordinator. I think that, when you look at the Browns situation last year and what took place with Ken Dorsey and trying to make that whole Deshaun Watson situation work, in order for them to come out of last season and say, Tommy Rees is the guy, after the offense performed at a historically bad level the way that they did, I think that really signals that Reese was probably in a lot of those meeting rooms, voicing his opinions that were very counter to what was taking place in Cleveland last year with Dorsey at the helm. So I think that they are going to mesh pretty well, and I'm excited about the coaching staff. I'm excited about the addition of Mike Bloomgren on the offensive line as the offensive line coach. He is a very talented, down to earth guy that I think that the guys in that room are really going to be magnetized to his leadership and all of that, his style and all that kind of stuff. So. And then you got guys like, Jacques Césaire on the defensive line, who I think is doing a tremendous job developing young defensive linemen wherever he's been. And that's also been a strength of Jim Schwartz as well. So I'm very optimistic about the coaching staff moving forward. I'm optimistic about the approach that they seem to be taking this season. Heading into training camp, there seems to be the intensity has definitely been ratcheted up a bit, and I really like where they're headed. I think, on the negative side of some of the things going on in Cleveland, I certainly believe that there are questions in the overall leadership layer of the triangle. And, I have questions. This was a conversation I had on Twitter probably about a week ago with a Browns fan. And basically, I have the Browns rated, number one in the league right now for analytics, which, a lot of people do. That's not a surprise. Mm-hmm. But somebody was kind of, poo-pooing on that and saying, well, what's the point if, they can only win 3 games and, the disasters and all that stuff, which I get that. I really do get that sentiment. However, with analytics, it can at times cause you to get out in front of your skis a little too much with the information and stuff that you're trying to do, especially if you're being aggressive with it. So my question is, I don't think the issue is in the analytics itself. I think the issue is more inside of the leadership and who's actually getting to make the final calls on things. So I think that ultimately the Browns, they're kind of realizing some of this stuff as well. Hopefully from the very top, when I say very top, I'm talking Haslam, I'm talking Dee Podesta. So hopefully they are, there's going to be, I know we've talked about alignment being a big keyword and, trying to have that. And they've certainly made their attempts, but I think with the, decision to trade 3 first-round picks for Deshaun Watson as the key piece of evidence, that there may not have been total alignment on that decision. Even though, what they say in public differs from that. But ultimately it led them down a rabbit hole where they made some decisions that I think ultimately led to what happened in 2024. And so for that reason, I say that the leadership, the integrity piece of that foundation is on shaky ground. But I am encouraged by, staying the course with Barry and Stefanski this season. I think it would have been very easy for Haslam to have chosen to move on after last season, but they decided to stay the course, and I think that decision will ultimately pay dividends. I hope that what they've learned from it is to, let everybody do their jobs, let Barry choose the players, let Kevin coach the team and choose his coaching staff, and everybody else just stay in their lanes. And I think if they do that, they'll find more success here in the near future.
This episode is sponsored by Manly Bands. Browns fans, head over to manlybands.com/dogs right now to get 30% off site-wide for the founder's favorite sale. The founder, John, it's his birthday, and they want to celebrate the manliest way possible by putting his favorite rings on sale. And why? Well, I guess apparently nothing says happy birthday to John like giving a discount to you. Plus, use code CAMP25, CAMP25 to get an extra $25 off your order. So check out all the manly rings and things that manlybands.com has to offer. They've got chains, they've got groomsmen gifts, they've got barware, they've got all kinds of stuff along with the manliest wedding bands you're ever going to find. Awesome stuff, awesome materials, awesome designs. You've heard me talk about it forever, but if you haven't actually gone and checked it out, now is the time to do it. 30% off site-wide for the Founders Favorites sale at manlybands.com/dogs and use promo code CAMP25 for an extra $25 off your order.
Since 1989, Mount Hope Fence has set the standard in outdoor living. From decks and railings to fences and patios, we've got you covered. Our lineup features top brands like TimberTech, AlumaGuard, Preferred Railing, and Unilock, along with our own premium Duralux vinyl products. For over 30 years, we've partnered with contractors ensuring reliable job site delivery. Discover quality and excellence in all things outdoors with Mount Hope Fence.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole Deshaun Watson trade, I mean, obviously things would have looked a lot different. We'd be talking about it way differently if he played like he did in Houston. But then there's also the side when you look back on everything and the information that we have now and some of the stuff that's come out, did the Browns just not have the proper intel that maybe Watson was succeeding in Houston kind of by the skin of his teeth? He was kind of getting away with playing a brand of football that really isn't going to work long-term in the NFL, but he was making it work at, early in his career. I don't know, but it definitely imploded and just blew up.
Yeah.
Just right in our faces, big time.
Well, I think that, Watson was obviously talented, especially, his time in Houston, and was really impressive as a quarterback and player, put up some really good statistical years. And so I don't think that the decision to pursue him was necessarily a wrong choice or anything like that. Ultimately, it turned out to be a bad decision. I think that there are so many factors, that they couldn't account for. Playing quarterback at a high level in the NFL takes a certain mindset, and I think that the layoff combined with the negative, criticism and the place where he was mentally just didn't work out.
That's fair. That's definitely fair. And then in your outlook for the Browns, I mean, sticking with the Deshaun Watson trade, you said that they may have been the only front office in the league able to weather the storm caused by that Deshaun Watson trade. So can you kind of talk about that and why you believe the Browns front office is maybe the only one in the league that could, come out of this still standing?
Yeah, I would say, if they're not they're one of the very few. I think that ultimately, they built a great team around, a few positions withstanding. You go back to the roster in 2020, 2023, what they did. Certainly they have, talent across the board. So Andrew Berry has done some nice things in acquiring players via trade, has made some nice signings, has also done a decent job drafting, especially when you consider the fact that they lost the 3 first-round picks.
It's true.
So they've still been able to acquire talent. And, the coaching staff, I think, is, he's a 2-time coach of the year. So, I don't know too many other GM and coach combinations that would have been able to keep their jobs after what took place.
Some would argue that that's just kind of the Jimmy Haslam way. I mean, Hugh Jackson went 1-31 and still kept his job for a 3rd season, which was insane. But no, this is definitely a different situation. Kevin Stefanski, we like Kevin on this podcast. We're big Kevin guys. He's definitely been able to do a lot with some craptastic situations that he's been handed in over his time here. And, he's overall, it's been pretty impressive what he's been able to do. And we talk all the time, whether fans like or dislike Andrew Berry, it's hard to argue with the fact that while we watch other teams, I mean, you look at like the Cincinnati Bengals, they can't sign their best pass rusher on defense. The Steelers are having trouble with TJ Watt. Some of these other teams, they got to, the Packers cut Jair Alexander. Meanwhile, the Browns have extended every single player on this roster that they've wanted to keep. We haven't had to cut anybody for financial, reasons. We haven't had to trade anybody off because we can't extend somebody. I mean, they traded for Jerry Jeudy last year, extended him. They gave Myles Garrett the biggest contract ever. That's, non-quarterback this past season. They've kept, Delpit, and, they've extended, I think they extended Ward under Barry. They extended, Njoku and all these other guys, the linemen, and JOK before he got hurt. I mean, just they keep the players they want, and they're still able to make the cap situation work despite what they invested in Deshaun Watson and what he's eating up, which is really impressive.
Yeah, I definitely believe the Browns, one of their strategic advantages is the way that they are able to do things under the salary cap, and their creative structuring of contracts and the things that they're doing in that regard that allows them to actually keep a lot of their talent on board. And they do a really good job of identifying guys early and paying them. And I think that's a huge critical piece. So, I know I've certainly given a lot of praise here to Stefanski and Barry early on, but they are certainly not faultless as well. And there are areas where, they need to improve. But overall, I think that they have the makings to be very successful and to be here long term.
Yeah, well, and they did just get their extensions, before the 2024 season and all that kind of stuff. So it makes sense why they're just sticking and rolling through this season. And then a lot of Browns fans wonder, hey, if it's another 3-win season and it's just garbage every week like it was last year, I mean, are these guys really going to keep their job? But you guys, you've got the Browns projected for 7 wins in 2025. So coming off the 3-14 season, moving up to 7 wins this year. And we'll just kind of mention here, so you've got strengths and weaknesses listed for this team. On the strength side, it's defensive line, it's the 2025 draft class, it's the analytics usage, which we just talked about, the future draft capital, and the play callers, which we already kind of talked about with Kevin and Tommy Reese. So going back up to the defensive line as one of the strengths, under Jim Schwartz, like you mentioned earlier, yeah, it has typically been a strength. We think it can be. I want to hear your opinion on the defensive line, because I would be more in the camp of it could be a strength, but I hesitate to call it like a full strength so far. We got Myles Garrett, obviously, but after that, it's a lot of, I hope this guy works. I hope this guy can step up. I hope, this guy can develop and that kind of stuff. So talk to me about the defensive line from your perspective.
Okay, hold on one second here. I had something pop up on my screen.
No, you're good.
So the defensive line to me in Cleveland is one of the top defensive lines in the entire NFL as far as based on my talent evaluation, and there's some projection there involved. However, Myles Garrett having the top, unquestionably the best defensive end in the entire NFL certainly helps that. But we're very high on Mason Graham and Mike Hall as well, becoming really, really good players, especially. And so when you really take a look at this is where the kind of the layers in the FE triangle come together, because you take the talent that you evaluated on film from college, and then you put them into, and you marry them up with who's going to be working with them in their meeting room, and that leads to Jacques Césaire, which we talked about earlier. Mm-hmm. So I think that really helps their overall development and growth as players, and I think that you'll see some really special things out of those players very soon on the football field in Cleveland. And then, we're still really high on Alex Wright. Alex Wright is still a young player. I know he missed a lot of time with injury last year and is coming back from that. But, if you take a look, I think at his last 7 games, a full 7 games played, I think he's got something like 5 or 6 sacks in those games. So, if you project that out, what does that look like? And then Isaiah McGuire might be the most slept on defensive end in the league, the way he played last year, especially in the run game. And I think that he has another level to unlock as a pass rusher as well. So talent is there. And then you add on guys like Tryon Shoyinka, who's coming in as a free agent from Tampa Bay. The guy was a former number 1 overall pick, or a first round pick, not number 1 overall, but first round pick. And I think that he had some more utilization problems in Tampa Bay versus his talent. So I think that in Jim Schwartz's wide nine scheme, that he will be able to line up on the outside and go after the quarterback. And I think that's going to be a role that he feasts in. And, then you also have guys as far as depth goes. I mean, when you're talking about having Shelby Harris and, Mike Hall and Jawan Briggs as your like third, fourth, and fifth guys in the D tackle room, that's pretty deep group. And I think that they're deep across the board, both at the, end and interior. And, ultimately, I think the Browns have made a very calculated decision to heavily invest in the depth at those positions versus other positions on the roster. I mean, you look at tight end, you look at wide receiver. I think all of Cleveland would want there to be a little bit more in those two rooms. However, they're pouring assets. I mean, they're really, really investing heavily into the defensive line because those guys will see more snaps ultimately than a fourth or fifth defensive end will see more snaps on the field than a fourth or fifth receiver.
Right. And that goes to the next strength that I want to talk to you about, the 2025 draft class, because we had Travis Hunter sitting there. We could have taken him. We could have really bolstered that wide receiver group. He would have easily been, the number 2 receiver probably on this roster, if not, making a case for number 1, depending on how Jerry Jeudy, if he can repeat that breakout season he had last year. But they didn't. They decided to, like you said, invest more in the defense. So they traded. They got some future draft capital. They got an additional second-round pick, which we used, and we'll talk about that here in a second. And then they took Mason Graham, like you just talked about, with the defensive line. So the 2025 draft class, talk to me about that being a strength for the Browns, and has that changed any since this came out based on the Quinshon Judkins arrest that came out last weekend?
So that's a very good question. So first of all, my background is kind of how I kind of got started in football was, through draft coverage, my love of the draft. And I've been doing that for about 7 or 8 years now, where I evaluate draft classes and put out, stuff and information in regard to that. So for me, this draft class was one of the highest scoring classes in the league based on my rankings of where I had players. So the Browns took 6 of my top 90 players overall. So very, very productive draft class for them. Even though I could argue with perhaps the Dillon Gabriel pick being where he was chosen and, ultimately picking 2 running backs in the same class. But, based on the actual value of players that they have coming in, I really, really, really like it. And then your question about the actual Judkins piece to this, yes, that was put out before we had this information. Mm-hmm. So it does change the calculation a little bit, or at least throws a wet towel onto that whole trade, because I did love what the Browns did with the trade with Jacksonville and being able to still get a top, a blue chip player in Mason Graham, and then get a additional second round pick, which ultimately turned into Judkins, and the first round pick in 2026. I thought it was a phenomenal trade, and that is the specific reason that I feel the Browns won the draft. As far as the overall draft class, I had them ranked number 1 in regard to that. So the Judkins things doesn't help. It's unfortunate, but it doesn't change the fact that I think they made the right decisions there.
Yeah, that's what we talked about too, was, at the time when they made the trade and then that's who they came away with was Judkins. It was like, wow, okay, we just got our new lead back. I mean, this guy could be a legitimate, bell cow running back in the NFL. We were very excited all the way up until obviously the arrest and everything. But it, like you said, it is a wet towel. It's not a damning type of thing yet, because we got to wait for the legal process to play out. Got to wait for the NFL to go through their, investigation and all that. He could end up getting, I've seen people speculate that he could get suspended for 3 to 4 games, 6 to 8. I see people speculating he's done. He'll never play. I think that's pretty unlikely. I think it's more of we're kind of thinking 6-game suspension, then he's probably back in there. And I mean, I'm not trying to just kind of shove aside a domestic violence situation. But we've seen a lot of these, unfortunately, in the NFL. So we're just kind of using the precedent that has been set to, speculate on what could happen here.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely an unfortunate situation. And I definitely think that he's probably going to miss some time as a result. All we have to do is look back to last season and what happened with the Mike Hall situation. So unfortunately, the Browns are probably going to be without him, or he's not going to be much of a factor the first half of the season. So that is one thing that I'm really looking to see what they do to adapt there, because I think coming in, Judkins is critical to what the Browns want to accomplish, especially early in the season as they get a quarterback comfortable. If that person's going to be a rookie quarterback, especially, you're going to be relying heavily on the run game and your defense. And so not having your number one option heading in just isn't an ideal situation in a season where the first half of the season is so tough with what you're up against on the schedule. And also, this thing can't fall apart and collapse and during that first half and Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry keep their jobs, because what will end up happening in the locker room is, this is just a repeat of last season. And the team gets down, and then, you're looking at a really, really ugly outcome. So I'm interested to see what they do. I think that, it's so important to get positive yardage on first and second down. There's a big difference between, picking up 3 yards and picking up 4 yards on first down. I mean, it's just very, very important. And unfortunately, Jerome Ford, while he creates explosive plays and makes explosive plays in the run games, he just takes too many negative runs.
Thank you.
Early.
Jeez,
So,
I feel like anytime I mention anything negative about Jerome Ford, I got 1,000 Browns fans coming at me saying he averaged 5.4 yards per carry last year. He was excellent. I'm like, then you didn't watch the games.
Yeah.
He's behind the line of scrimmage more than anybody I've ever seen. The negative plays, if we run on first down, and it's going to be at least 2nd and 10, if not 2nd and 12.
Yeah.
Yeah. Get him in space and he can hit the home run. But he strikes out way more than he hits a home run.
Yeah, and you need a lot of singles and doubles.
Yes. Yeah, give me a freaking single.
Right.
Yes, exactly. Or a walk, for crying out loud.
Yeah, get on base. Yeah.
Yes, get on base. This episode is sponsored by Butcher Box for Pets. Browns fans, we love our fellow dogs, our Dog Pack members, and the Dog Pound faithful, but let's not kid ourselves. The most important dogs in our lives are, well, our dogs. Your furry friends aren't just pets, they're part of the family. But the question is, what are you actually feeding them? Head to butcherbox4pets.com/products to see all the options for your dogs, including fresh and dry foods, treats, meal toppers, and even toys for your dog. If you're not sure what your dog will like best, try the Premium Nutrition Adult Starter Pack. And they even have a vacation bundle to take care of your four-legged friends while you're on vacation this summer. And right now you can get 20% off your order with promo code DAWGS, DAWGS, when you check out. At ButcherBox, they believe in real ingredients. Their pet foods have been developed and certified by vet nutritionists to contain 0 artificial flavors or preservatives. You get protein-packed formula with over 50% of the recipe comprised of third-party certified humane ButcherBox meat, plus functional ingredients like pre- and postbiotics to support your dog's vitality and digestion. I know that sounds like a lot, but the bottom line is your dogs are getting the nutrition and the value they need, and honestly, that they deserve. I know our home wouldn't be the same without Odie, our 100-pound golden retriever who thinks he's a 10-pound lap dog. He is not, but it gives us peace of mind knowing that we're giving him quality food instead of just that factory processed garbage from the store. And speaking of the store, no need to go. ButcherBox for Pets delivers their high-quality food right to your door. So head to butcherboxforpets.com/products and use promo code DAWGS, DAWGS, for 20% off your order. It's time for us dogs to give our dogs the nutrition they deserve. So kind of transitioning, we just talked about the draft class. You said we had 6 of your, top 90 players. There's obviously one of those specifically that everybody wants to hear you talk about. So looking over at the weaknesses, I'm not going to push back on any of these. And we joked the other night and said they must have had a list of about 25 of these and they had to narrow it down somehow to get 5 on this sheet. But you got aging offensive line, future dead cap or dead money on the cap, NFLPA grades, talked about that. Wide receiver depth, talked about that. QB uncertainty goes into the outlook that you have here, the statement that I really wanted to read here. You say, we expect Shedeur Sanders to become the starter soon, and we project him to perform well enough in the Browns offense to question taking a quarterback early in the 2026 draft. Tell everybody why Shedeur Sanders could be the Cleveland Browns' answer at this position finally.
Well, first of all, I want to state during my draft process, he was my 27th ranked player overall. So
where was he on the quarterbacks?
Quarterbacks, he was number 2.
Okay.
Behind Cam Ward.
Second quarterback, a first round pick. Okay.
Yeah. So I was all in on Cam Ward, and I thought that, if the Browns could have had any way to trade up for him, I mean, they were so close to.
I was there too, buddy. I was like, come on, just go get Ward. I want him so bad.
So close. But however, I do think that Sanders has a lot to like about his game. Obviously it's been talked about at great lengths, but what I see when I watch Sanders on the field is number one, just the accuracy and the ability to throw with touch. He can put the ball exactly where he needs it to go. And that's a really unique trait for quarterbacks. And to do what he did behind that offensive line and being able to stand in the pocket and take the kind of shots that he took, I think bodes well for him. And I think that the question marks with him, obviously, to me, are a little bit, kind of his, I guess, and it's coming up now a lot in the conversation, I guess, his overall football acumen, what he was exposed to at Colorado, the system, all that kind of stuff, and pre-snap, stuff that I think that the Browns are really going to try to work hard to bring him up to speed on. I think where he excels is the post-snap and the picture he gets in his head after the snap at the top of his drop, and being able to identify, where to go with the football and get through his progressions. So I do think he has a lot of stuff, a lot of natural talent. He's not that overall athlete that you would love to have. He's doesn't have the arm talent of Cam Ward, but I think definitely has enough. And I think he's more of a quarterback, in the sense of like a, Montana Brady. and I don't, I'm not putting that expectation on him. I'm just saying, like, the things that make those guys really good, I think Shedeur's got some of that. And those guys weren't the most athletic, players running around back there, but they actually, highly accurate with the football, can process and go through their progressions.
Yeah, I talked to, I don't know if you know Jake Burns from Browns Film Breakdown on Twitter.
Absolutely.
But we did an episode and we talked about Shedeur, and he likened him a couple times to Brock Purdy, just in the makeup of the quarterback. Doesn't have the strongest arm, not the most athletic guy. He's not going to come out here and wow you with his athletic ability or anything like that. But he's accurate, he's smart, he can identify, he can process, and he's in a system that helps him be successful. And I think that does sound like the Browns, maybe just not on the level, obviously, that the 49ers can do it. But again, we just have not seen Kevin with a quarterback that's really capable. He's been with subpar quarterbacks pretty much the entire time he's been here. And, we do have a lot of hope for Shedeur, for sure.
Yeah, and you should, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I think what happened in the draft process, obviously everybody's not privy to all that information, and a lot of it's been speculated on and reported on. But at the end of the day, I think that he is a good match for the Stefanski offense and what the Browns want to do offensively, and I think he's going to turn some heads in training camp. I really do. I know that, Flacco is what he is. I think, and the way I see it playing out is that he's ultimately like kind of like an emergency, break the glass in case of emergency kind of situation. He's north of 40 years old, and if I think a lot of people forget that the last time he was here, while he played and had some great moments and some great games, and it was an awesome ride. That was 2 years ago, and even then, he didn't want to get hit, and made some errant throws in situations where the pressure was in his face, and that ultimately led to turnovers. And 3 of those happened in the playoff game against the Houston Texans. And I don't think that, Stefanski wants to necessarily go that route unless he has to.
I like having Joe Flacco here for what you said. For me, it's a lot of, if neither of the rookies come through training camp, making the coaching staff feel confident starting them right away. Okay, we can roll with Joe. He can at least make us competitive for the first stretch of the season. We've seen him before. The fans love him. It'll be at least exciting. Is he going to turn the ball over? Yeah, it was 2.5 on average, I think, turnovers per game when he was here before. Not ideal, but that is Joe Flacco. That's the Joe Flacco experience. What's your take on Kenny Pickett? Do you think the Browns are going to roll into the season with all 4 of these quarterbacks on the roster? Do you think that's feasible for training camp to get anybody really ready? Or I don't know. There are people that are really high on Kenny Pickett and what he could potentially be with Kevin Stefanski. And then there's people like me who just does not see him ever being a viable starting option.
Yeah. So for me, when they've announced the trade for Kenny Pickett, I was kind of like, oh, what are we doing here? I thought, definitely I thought it was, he was going to be the backup plan as far as competing for the second or third spot. However, that said, I do believe that if anybody can maximize Kenny Pickett, it might be Stefanski. There are aspects to his game that I think that they are attracted to, mainly his, mobility, being able to get out outside of the pocket. I think that where Pickett just really struggles is from within the pocket. So, I can see, if you're looking at Pickett as a game manager, we're going to run the ball. He's going to take care of the football, pull out some games the way he did in Pittsburgh at the end, kind of with the few clutch performances, stuff like that, make big throws in big moments. That is something that they, are attracted to, but ultimately I don't really see how Kenny Pickett is going to beat out Joe Flacco or Shedeur Sanders for that matter.
And then what about Dillon Gabriel? I feel, so if you go back and you look at the OTAs and the minicamp, they gave Gabriel first team reps with Kenny Pickett. I mean, Joe was kind of sprinkled in there. Obviously, he wasn't getting nearly as many reps because he didn't need them. They know what they got there. So it felt like they were evaluating those two potentially for the starting spot. So what you said Dillon Gabriel obviously was the 7th guy the Browns drafted, the one that was not in your top 90. I'm assuming. Right. So give me just a quick breakdown on him and why you think Shedeur will pass him up in training camp.
Yeah. So don't get me wrong. Like Gabriel, I'm not trying to discount him when I say this, but Gabriel, again, he's another guy that I think that Stefanski in particular is attracted to a lot of his qualities. His movement skills, his footwork, his ability to process. His ideal role to me is that Brock Purdy role where he's like the distributor point guard of the football team, where he's just, distributing the football. He does have accuracy. He's got more of an arm than people will give him credit for. But at the end of the day, his success would be more of an outlier in the league, based on his height, and his size. So at the end of the day, to me, he's kind of like the most gorgeous, 5'2" model, that, is absolutely beautiful, but just not tall enough to, walk the runways. So, I like Gabriel as far as like having him around here long-term as a backup, and be able to spot start in some situations in games. And I honestly think that that's where the Browns I think that when they decided to make the trade with Jacksonville, that they decided that they were willing to sit out this draft and wait until 2026 to really get the franchise guy. And in the meantime, they were going to go ahead and take Gabriel to allow him an opportunity to have a year under Stefanski and then try to take their franchise quarterback in 2026. And then they had the opportunity to take a swing on Sanders in the 5th round. and they did that and traded up in order to do so. I think at that point, it was too good of an opportunity to pass up. So we'll see how it all works out, but it does give them flexibility. And whether or not Sanders works out as the guy this year, I think that they do want to have Gabriel around for the long term to at least be in that spot starter kind of backup role.
It's interesting. I kind of feel like they may have fallen backward into a potential answer at quarterback with Shedeur in the 5th round. Is sort of how and I feel like you must be thinking the same thing with your projection that he's going to take over in training camp. So when you say that you expect him to become the starter soon, what is soon? Is that week 1? Is it week 6? What are you thinking?
Well, so obviously I feel that, the talent is there. It just depends on, like I said, how well he picks up kind of a lot of the pre-snap stuff that they're going to try to teach him and bring him up to speed on, and just learning and picking up the offense and being able to manage the huddle and get the play calls in accurately and all that kind of stuff. So just the operation in general is what I would basically say. How well he handles that is going to be a big determining factor. And also he has some stuff that he really has to work on with under center, his footwork. So getting that, crisp to the point where they're comfortable with, I think will have a huge impact. But ultimately, I'm open to it happening during training camp and him being named the starter heading into the season in week 1. But ultimately, I think, the schedule is pretty tough. So that will certainly be a consideration. I also think that, Kevin's personality is very conservative as well. So we're probably more likely to see either Pickett or Flacco start the season. But at some point early on in the year, I do expect them to go to Sanders eventually.
Okay. Well, that's what we're just hoping that somebody emerges as the guy. It would be awesome to go into 26 with 2 first-round picks and not need a quarterback. That would be ideal. But
it would be. And, back to that a little bit, I think something that they could possibly do is decide to, if Sanders plays well enough to question taking the quarterback next year, they can parlay those picks or one of those picks into 2 2027 first-round picks. So, and of course, everybody knows who's more likely to come out in 2027.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're Buckeye fans, so we're big Jeremiah Smith guys.
Yeah, Jeremiah Smith. For sure.
Or are you talking if or were you on the quarterback?
Well, I was on the quarterback. Like
okay, so you were talking Arch Manning.
Yeah, so like if they want to give Shedeur a 2-year window to see what happens, they could.
Oh, so if he proves like he might be the guy, but we're not sure.
Sure, yeah.
We'll give him 26.
We'll give him 26.
Kick it down to I'm with you now.
Kick the can down the road to 27 and potentially Arch Manning being there.
Gotcha. Okay. Yep, I think that's one thing a lot of Browns fans still need to get through their head is that I'm pretty sure, I don't know if he's straight up said it, but there's a lot of indicators Arch Manning not coming out in 2026.
Sure, he needs to play some games in college first.
Yeah, everyone's got him crowned and he hasn't even played yet.
For sure.
Hasn't even played. And everybody dogs on Shedeur for being popular just because of his dad. I keep telling him, at least he played in college.
Right.
Arch Manning hasn't played yet, but whatever. So I got one last question here for you, then we'll get you out of here. So last year, obviously on your chart, 3 wins, terrible season for the Browns. You guys projected for 7 wins here in 25. And then next year in 26, we're moving up into the Contenders tier with 10 victories. And then in 2027, you got it projected for 12 wins. The Browns are in the elite tier, and you've got us pegged for the division title in the AFC North. So what went into that projection? Because I think a lot of fans would look at this and say 12 wins, AFC North title. We haven't won that thing forever.
Sure. So, it definitely, we're taking a look at a lot of different inputs, right? The roster where it is now, but we also look at where we expect the roster to be in 26 and 27 based on a lot of factors. So, the incoming draft class this year has an impact on that. The draft capital that they have next year in 2026 has an impact on that as well. The way that we see the Browns being able to develop some of those players, especially on the defensive line and where we think they will be able to come along, plays an important role in that as well. And then we also kind of have to take a look at the rest of the division and where we see those teams trending as well. And fortunately for Cleveland, we see that, and I think a lot of people might be excited by this on your podcast. We see that the Pittsburgh Steelers are probably heading for more of a rebuild, according to our predictions. And then also things are very tumultuous in Cincinnati. I think that Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase make up for a lot of flaws on that roster, but will it ever be enough to put them over the hump over the next 3 years? We don't know. I could actually make a very valid case that, it would not shock me at all if 2 years from now Joe Burrow was demanding a trade to get out of there. That's one scenario that could play out. But they're in a tough spot with Lamar's going to be good for the next couple years for sure. But we ultimately see the Browns kind of being able to overtake them in the near future.
Well, that's encouraging. And that's what I was talking about at the beginning whenever I said you're going to give us some stuff to believe in. And that would be so exciting to watch the Browns come back up to the top of the division and overtake those teams. That would be so cool.
It would for sure.
Hoping your projections come true, man. Really hoping this stuff comes to fruition. This is great.
Awesome. Yeah. I tell everybody with the franchise valuation, think of it kind of like a credit score for NFL teams. And it's looking at the 3-year outlook overall. Another thing that we take a look at is we call it assets under contract. So, how many of these players are under contract, through 2027 and take a snapshot of that. And that's an actual data input as well. And it's something that, with this whole system, it's not like I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I come from a scouting kind of, I love to evaluate players, that kind of stuff. But I needed something to kind of help forecast how teams are built and how, moments and events play into the trajectory of franchises.
Yeah, it's awesome. This is super interesting stuff. And I really appreciate you coming on here and explaining everything and talking about the Browns FV score with me and all this kind of stuff. Again, everybody go over to inmotion.football. That's the website, inmotion.football. Check out everything that Damon's got going on over there. I really appreciate you coming on here and talking to us. Follow him on Twitter too. Follow him on X and check out everything you're doing over there.
Appreciate it. They can follow me there at NFL in Motion. And then also stay tuned. We've got the 2025 season preview getting ready to drop on Monday. That will have all of the 32 teams, FV scores and rankings, along with breakdowns of all 32 teams.
That sounds great. Everybody go check that out. Damon, thanks again for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Josh. Appreciate you having me on.
So I hope you guys all enjoyed that conversation with Damon Wolfe from In Motion Football. Make sure you head over to his website, inmotion.football. Check out everything that's going on over there. Appreciate you guys tuning in as always. Drop it in the comments. What do you guys think about this FV chart, about the franchise evaluation that In Motion Football gave to the Browns, the 17th ranking out of 32? Do you think is that too high? Do you guys agree with the way he broke it down for the Browns over this next 3 seasons? Do you think we hit that 12-win mark in 2027? I know that's a long ways away, but this is the kind of stuff we're going to talk about right now. And it's just really cool to hear everything that goes into all of the projections, all the data, all the analytics, and all that kind of stuff. It's really interesting stuff, at least for me. I don't know. Maybe you guys don't get all hot and bothered by stats and numbers and stuff, but I do. You know that if you watch the show. So again, jointhedawgs.com if you want to play fantasy football. Get in now. Signups are still going on for about another month. You got about a month to get in there and sign up. But the longer you wait, the closer you run the risk of not making the cut for a league. So get in now, secure your spot. and you'll be good to go. So jointhedogs.com. Thanks again for tuning in today. We'll be back with another episode soon. Until I see you guys again, let's go Browns.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Dawgs Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Twitter at the Dawgs Podcast. Get your thoughts on the show at thedogspodcast.com.
This episode is sponsored by Southern New Hampshire University. Browns fans, I can't tell you guys how many people I've known over the years who have missed out on job opportunities simply because they don't have the right degree or even have a degree at all. I mean, these are people who otherwise would have been perfect for the position they wanted, but they got turned away simply because of educational requirements. If you've ever felt stuck in a job you didn't enjoy, or you felt unqualified or unable to advance your career due to your lack of education or experience, heck, maybe you even have a degree, but now you feel like you chose the wrong major, Southern New Hampshire University could be the answer for you. Go to snhu.edu/bark, B-A-R-K, to learn how you can get started today. SNHU has programs in psychology, cybersecurity, computer science, sports management, game development, data analytics, and finance. SNHU is one of the largest online accredited universities in the United States, and their programs are radically affordable. Their online tuition rates are some of the lowest in the nation. And you might even be eligible for financial aid or have prior college credits that could fast track your degree at SNHU. And because networking is everything, your courses are taught by faculty with real world experience, so you'll have opportunities to connect with people inside the industry. And then when you graduate, SNHU will still be there to help you as you begin your job search. So if you're ready for something new, head over to snhu.edu/bark and learn how you can get started working toward your new career today.